landlords hate you. If you own a gym right now, landlords hate you. And it's not your fault. You ask a gym owner, hey, you saving up with your 401k? And they're like, 401k, is that a fucking laser? What is that? I don't know what a 401k, we're small business owners. We don't even think about retirement at the time.
Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I am Sir John Franklin, and I am joined today with my co-host, as always, Mateo Lopez. And we have a very special episode for you this week. We are going to be talking about the business of fitness. It's not just the business of fitness, it's the fitness business of fitness, because we have a very special guest today, Stu Brauer. Welcome. How are you?
I'm excellent, guys. I'm excellent. Thank you for having me.
So I invited you on today because I saw a talk you did, and I thought it was excellent. You were talking about gym ownership in a way a lot of thought leaders in the industry are not. And that is through the lens of how do we build wealth for gym owners in a single location manner, right? Because we operated gyms in New York. We had 5 facilities in the area. And when we sold for like starter house money, right? Like we didn't make real wealth. And I think if we made a couple small shifts throughout the process, the outcome would have been very different for us. And it was simply because, one, we didn't have the knowledge, and two, there weren't enough people talking about this path. And your talk laid it out exactly the way I would have done it if I had a mulligan. And so I want to share it with our listeners. I want to share it with the gym world. So maybe you can give us some insight into your path and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, the real quick summary. So, I'm in high school. I'm a redheaded kid in an all-boys school trying to play lacrosse. I weighed 145 pounds soaking wet, trying to get laid and be on varsity, right? So you find your way to the weight room, right? And so that took me to exercise science for my degree, and I found CrossFit in 2006. And that led me down a path of Nashville, Tennessee, and working at an affiliate.
06? 06?
Yeah, 2006 when I got into CrossFit. Started working at an affiliate that summer. Got paid $600 a month. It was awesome. And we didn't know what the going on. We didn't know anything about business, but it was great. It was times were different. And all that being said, I stayed in the Nashville area after graduation, and I knew nothing about business. So I went to go work for the only people in the industry that knew anything about business, and that was the Globo Gym. But back then, you got to understand, leaving CrossFit to go Globo Gym, you were excommunicated. People hated like my close little ecosystem. Yeah, absolute traitor. But that's where I went, and I learned how to fire, learned how to hire. I knew what it was like to run a payroll budget of $45,000 a month and have a marketing budget of $12,000 a month, and all the little things that none of us were doing. That education allowed me to show up in Charlotte, North Carolina, open up a CrossFit affiliate, and do extremely, extremely well because I had kind of my MBA in business from the Globo Gym world. And then take the things I liked, got rid of the things I didn't. And that led to success with my affiliate was CrossFit South End. I ran there for about 7 years. Then I had a come to Jesus. I no longer aligned with the affiliate CrossFit thing. I wanted to create my own. So de-affiliated, purchased commercial real estate, created a completely different, unique belief in fitness and a different brand, went that route, knowing that the real estate was going to be the retirement. For all the gym owners listening, there's not a lot of value in our depreciated kettlebells. You ask a gym owner, hey, you saving up with your 401k? And they're like, 401k, is that a fucking laser? What is that? I don't know what a 401k, we're small business owners. We don't even think about retirement at the time. I did. And I knew real estate was the closest path forward if I wanted to stay in the fitness industry. So bought the building, and then fast forward, we had a company come out of San Antonio, Texas, and offer me essentially 4.5 times my mortgage and operating costs to lease my property for 2 10-year terms. And that was when I bowed out and said, I did it. I made it. I'm not, gym ownership. I achieved the end goal. I had a great time doing it. And then I opened up the gym real estate company in 2021. I've got my broker's license in North Carolina. But my goal with the gym real estate companies, I was so disenchanted with brokers. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to work as a tenant or buyer end of it with a broker. Besides forwarding a bunch of emails and sending you the listings and then, maybe negotiating on your behalf, but not really because trust me, that landlord probably owns other buildings and they really don't want to get on the bad side of that landlord in case they bring another tenant to one of their other buildings. I always thought tenant reps really didn't do much. I didn't like what they were offering. How many gym owners do you guys know got kicked out of their spot because there's no decibel or noise clause, right? They didn't have the option to purchase or the option to take over the space next door. The broker didn't understand that it's a CrossFit gym. They're going to be running around shirtless in the parking lot and didn't put that provision in the lease. And then they got kicked out of their, like, just all this shit. So I created a suite of services and a new professional class, site suitability consultant. And now we can work with any gym, any fitness company in the United States. We help them find the right site. We do operational capacity analysis on the locations. We do financial pro formas. And then I stick around and do business consulting on the back end. Because I don't know if anyone realizes this right now, landlords hate you. If you own a gym right now, landlords fucking hate you. And it's not your fault. It's the fault of COVID and the class of gyms that were undercapitalized and kind of hanging on pre-COVID, and then COVID showed up and just knocked them out. A lot of landlords were left holding the bag. So now when I go, I've got a client right now and I had to tell them the bad news. I'm like, listen, I'm sorry, you're not attractive enough on paper for this gym owner to give you $200,000 of TI after his last tenant died on him in 2020. That was a gym use. So again, it's, I believe that there was this need to help gym owners because I want them to be able to buy buildings, and they're in great positions to do so. Even the ones that probably don't think they are, they're in much better position to buy buildings. Just like your boy that you had on, I think it was Angelo, right? Over at Live Oak. These SBA loans, if you've got some good DSCR coverage, debt service coverage ratio, and you've got a profitable entity and you've got a good head on your shoulders, you've got a decent likelihood of being able to purchase some commercial real estate in your market. Still be a gym owner, hang out. You don't have to retire. You don't have to lease out your space like I did. Play that game for a while. But then when you do want to tap out, when you do want to pivot, you have an option.
Lot to unpack there. So what year did you open your affiliate? When did you get started?
I started working in affiliates in 2006. My affiliate open was 2010, 2009, 2010, right there.
You were a little early there. And you said you did that 7 years before you kind of got a little
de-affiliated and rebranded.
Yeah. Okay. Because one of the things I do appreciate a lot about the content you create is it's obvious you spend a lot of time studying the boutique world as well. And those guys just understand space utilization and concepts in a way that CrossFit is starting to embrace, but definitely wasn't in 2017. So talk to me a little bit about leaving in the concept you started. So what was the new gym, and what'd you want to do that you felt like constrained couldn't do within the affiliate model?
I'll blame a little bit of it was education. I went and got my CCP, or I went and studied under James Fitzgerald and OPEX, and that was a high level of education. And I did internships with Training Think Tank and Max El-Haj and Kyle Ruth. So I had this different level of education, and I also came from the exercise science background. But really, what it was the blend of sport and the fitness methodology that was my problem. I serviced a very young demographic. I had girls, not like women, but 29 years old, 32 years old, that would cry during the open because some other broad in Wichita, Kansas beat them in the open. And I'm like, you work at Bank of America 9 to 5. This is not your fucking career. Why are you crying in my office on a Friday night? Like, we're all out there having a good time. That sport thing took over, and that's my fault. That's a culture issue. I probably fed into that too much early on in my CrossFit career. But I also had a chip on my shoulder. I opened up in South End, North Carolina. So think of Buckhead, Atlanta. Think of Brooklyn, New York right now. Think of these very Austin, Texas, very trendy, hot popping spots. And I was like, man, did I do well because CrossFit was on my name and I was in South End? Like, did I actually do this? So I rebranded. I created a high op cap model. So it was the first in-place model. So yoga and spin studios are in-place models. That's why they make more money per square foot than any CrossFit could ever make. And I knew I wanted an in-place model. So we did one, and we got rid of some of the things I thought are silly. Kipping, everything, Olympic weightlifting, everything, barbell dropping, 7-foot barbells I thought were absolutely ridiculous. It's the dumbest idea I've ever seen in a group fitness scenario. Show me a client with a 7-foot barbell in their hands, and I'll show you 4 feet of wasted metal.
You replaced it all with GHD med ball sit-ups, right? That was
yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I went on Amazon and I went to Titan Fitness and I bought 24 5-foot barbells that would hold up to 285 pounds. It's got the men's, the 27.5 millimeter knurling or whatever it is for the guys, but they're 5 feet. So I just saved 2 feet per person in class. And I always thought about square footage. Like I always looked at the floor and go, I pay for every square foot, every minute of every day, but we don't maximize it. CrossFit got to a place where it's like, I want everyone to have their own rower and everyone to have their own GHD and everyone to have their own spot on the pull-up bar. And the numbers just don't scale. This is also due, a lot of people understand the commercial real estate history here. The reason Glassman's 2 articles, if you guys recall, creating a garage gym, he had like 2-part series on building out a gym. He talked about industrial. Well, why did he talk about industrial? Oh, that's right. The crash of 08 had just happened. And a landlord would not only blow you, but give you a year free of rent if you went and rented his warehouse post 2008 crash. So not only was it the nature of needing high ropes, like or ropes to hang from your ceiling for what? A workout you're going to do 3 times a month, 4 times a month. It was more of an economics thing. It made more sense. Standalone buildings typically, but not always. So industrial made a lot of sense for people. 2013, 14, Orange Theory shows up and says, hey, I can do this CrossFit kind of thing prettier, more sophisticated, and in a more retail position, like retail setting. Now you see gyms want retail locations. They want the foot traffic. They want the boutique-y feel. But that history of where the commercial real estate thing has kind of ebbed and flowed because industrial used to be real cheap. Industrial is much more expensive these days. It's not as much dollar for dollar that great of a deal. You know, retail in Charlotte, North Carolina, $42 a square foot. You know, a warehouse in Charlotte like mine, we lease out for 32.
Where we are, you can get office for cheaper than industrial. It's crazy, like Class A office. It's
for right
wild.
now. Well, because that just the moment it post-COVID office is everything has its moment. Everything's cyclical, right? So industrial was a shit use back in the day, but then e-com and the internet happened. Industrial got cooler, and industrial is going to get cool again because I got clients in North Carolina buying warehouses, but they get outbid at every turn from the cannabis companies that are buying warehouses in non-legalized states, just sitting there and waiting. So that when the green light comes, they're good to go.
Yeah, we had a gym owner on here, Andrea Savard, who made $2 million. Similar story to you. She bought a building for her gym, and then because of zoning restrictions, she wasn't able to operate in there. And then she leased it to a cannabis company and made $2 million. And I think it was under a year. 7 months, more than she had made doing her entire 10 years of being an affiliate.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it was part real estate stuff. We created a new unique belief in fitness called tempo training. I believe in some different things from a strength and conditioning perspective, but yeah, so I wanted to see if I could create my own thing and not rely on the merit of CrossFit, which I love. And I believe everything in fitness right now has everything to give kudos and tip the hat to. CrossFit did a beautiful thing. It's constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Find me one successful fitness model in the States right now that is not constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. So, I mean, CrossFit is the pack leader of this whole thing.
And it's just figuring out how to do it in a smaller footprint. And that's something I appreciate that you've been talking about. And so we actually had Andrew Charlesworth on 2 days ago. My man. Yeah, I listened to the show, one of the shows that you guys did in preparation for the episode you did with him. And, he's telling we asked him some success stories from within his network. One of which was just, hey, I know a guy at a small gym. He's paying $5,000-6,000 out of the gym. He owns the real estate and that's it. He's crushed it. He's murdered it in his town. But then we asked him about his gym and he's like, yeah, we're bougie. And we're like, oh, why are you bougie? And he's like, well, we got 30 rowers and 30 assault bikes. And I was like, but that's not what we should be pushing people to. How do we get gyms making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month out of 1,500 to 2,000 square feet? Because that's how they're going to be able to buy their building. That's how they're going to be able to get more foot traffic. That's going to be how they're going to survive. And we got lucky. One, we started in the if you build it, they will come days of CrossFit. But 2, we were in New York City. So it wasn't an area where you could just blow out the wall next door and open the warehouse.
You had to get creative.
Yeah. So we called all our spaces submarines. And so we didn't know what we were doing. I think if I was operating in, Gainesville, Florida, I would have just done what everybody else did at the time, which is success is only correlated to the number of members. The higher, the more successful. Forget revenue, forget profit. And then the way you grow is you just grow your space out till you hit about like 10,000 square feet. And then instead of like worrying about like an asset, you just open a second, a third, a fourth gym until you bankrupt yourself.
We also did kind of do that.
Well, we did that part. Yeah. We didn't bankrupt ourselves.
We also like expanded to a bigger space for one of them, had to go back. Yeah, we did a little bit of that. Don't you worry.
We made all the mistakes in the book, but we got kind of lucky. But I do think this idea of space efficiency is really important. Who are some people you see?
The efficiency or lack thereof of your square footage, and where you bet the best studies of OPCAT. When I started studying in 2017 and 2016, prisons. The best studies that are out there are done on prisons for operational capacity.
Why?
Because crowding and again, you have significant issues of if you overcrowd in prisons because of, for the word that all the CrossFitters love, there's community in prisons too, kids. Great communities in prisons, okay? And the communities that are in prisons, though, like to kill each other. So you can't overcrowd these spaces with these volatile communities. And when you think about, the whole layout of things and where do guards have enough room to move around without being too close to the murderers, like you have to think of OPCAP and traffic patterns. And I also experienced a lot in Globo gyms. When I would set up a Globo gym, why do we put the cardio decks up front and the meatheads and the lifting in the back, and how much square footage was based in between, and blah, 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 all this stuff.
I wanted to ask a question about your Globo Gym days. It's not real estate related, but I know you said you kind of learned you got your almost MBA in gymming from when you started working at the Globo Gym. Were there any sales lessons that you learned that carried over into your success when you did your affiliate and also rebranded and pivoted?
And Mateo, I know because you're very much a marketing and sales guy and all that. You'll love this. So I show up first day and I'm like, cool. Young little trainer. I've got the CrossFit thing no one else has. That's one of the reasons they hired me at first, is just a trainer. And I worked my way up to like VP of personal training. And I'm like, cool, where are my clients? They're like, they're out on the floor. You have to floor pull your first 10. Which back in the day, this is AirPod days, which is not much different than it is now, but AirPods were very new, MP3 players. You got to go up to the chick on the adductor machine and be like, you do one of these where you do the universal motion of pulling it out of her ear and be like, hey, hi, I'm Stu over here. Yeah, I'm with the personal training department. I saw you're working on something here. This great. You mind if I show you something else? I think you're going to like, and then hopefully I'm closing her on a $2,400 package. But that was like your first 10, and then they would start feeding you some. But no, that was the sales gig. If they cry, they buy, right? Like I learned the hardcore Sharky closing, the nasty sales stuff, like how to overcome the spousal objections in a way that didn't resonate well with me ethically, but that's what that game was. I mean, and you're able to learn that and then find ways to dilute it down to something that you can sleep well at night with, and then use. That's why I show up in Charlotte. I worked out of the back of my affiliate, back of my truck, F-150 pickup truck, $600 of Craigslist equipment, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. class. And I grew it into one of the largest gyms in the Charlotte area in under 2 years. And I did it all on the back of the shit I knew. I mean, I was on the CrossFit message boards asking people, how do I close a deal? I had all the business stuff down. I was asking people how to use a hammer saw or hammer drill, because I was completely adept at putting up my own rig. But all the business stuff I 100% had nailed down, and I attributed all that to the Globo Gym time.
What were some of the things you would transformed, I guess? So maybe you're going up to them and they tell you, make them cry. So what's the Stu version of it?
Yeah. So if they cry, they buy. So essentially, I remember one of the first videos I made under WTF Gym Talk was the idea of, I would visit affiliates in my travels, and so many of them never had any office space. And I was like, how do you not have office space? Now, again, I was also doing like a PT first model at the time, but like selling high package one-on-one training, I got to have an intimate conversation with you. I can't have, grace happening in the background and just, thunderstruck going down. I need some private space. What if I wanted to reprimand a coach or have a serious conversation with a staff member? I need some private office space. Like little things like that and that's where I remember the first time I got a chance to actually talk about business. Coop was there. We all got invited. I invited myself to the 2014 Box Pro Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. I wasn't invited.
Box Pro.
RIP, right? I used to write for them for free just to get my name out there because I thought, I had something to say. And I I remember the first time having these conversations with some other gym owners, you talk about something as simple as like, you don't have an office? Do you not see how that's an issue whatsoever? No, it's kind of cool. We have me, and then you just lay a couple basic things about sales or whatever down in the conversations you need to have to close that kind of a deal. And then they're like, yeah, you're right. I guess an office is. And like, to me, I'm just like, how was that a nugget? How does that impress you? Like that little bit of information. So is little stuff like that, price prezo sheets. I mean, from the jump, I always had a laminated price prezo sheet. You have the schedule on the backside so you can get that micro commitment from Sally. So have you had a chance to look at our membership pricing schedule, Sally? Oh, I think I saw on the website. Awesome. So do you like AM or PM workouts? Well, I like them. Like, cool. So I've got my schedule here, and I'd give her the dry erase marker. That's why you get it laminated, and you have her circle the class times that she thinks she's going to come to. And now she's making a micro commitment to herself and to you. And then that way, if she gives you an objection later of, oh, I don't think I have time, like bullshit, you just fucking show me exactly when you were going to come into the gym. So it was little stuff like that I picked up from the Globo gym scene.
And have you found that this stuff where you're essentially learning how to become this like sales machine, when you're going to like go get a mortgage now, essentially you're kind of selling yourself to the bank as well, right? You have to prove to them that you're bankable. So do you see that there's any kind of carryover there from your experience going through this?
The number one thing I remember my mentor when I was at the Globo gym taught me from sales is your goal is to have every objection out of the way before they walk in the door. If they walk in the door and do as a prospect, a lead turning into a prospect, and they still have objections you haven't discussed or talked about, you're already one step behind. You can still recover by doing the consult well and overcoming the objections there. So that's the same thing. Like when I'm working with someone who wants to go get a loan, I'm like, cool, let's think of every objectionable reason the bank would have to not want to bank with you. Right. And then do we have a solution for that? Do we have a way that we're hopefully going to soften that blow? And if we don't, we got to go into it and manage our expectations and be like, when this question gets asked as to why X, Y, or Z, and you don't really have a good answer for it,
just take your shirt off.
Yeah, don't be too butthurt if the bank passes on you.
So it's just objection handling. That's all it is forever.
That's all life is. That's all life
is. It's a secret.
Get all the objections out of the way early. Like if you start a relationship with someone, start dating someone. I was married. I had a kid. We got divorced. We're still very tight, very close. But I remember my first date with my girlfriend now. It's like, I don't want kids. I don't want any more kids. I'm getting a vasectomy. I work 60 hours a week. I like to travel. I like to do this, blah, blah, blah. What about you? Like I got all the objections out of the way from jump, right? Like date 3, she was taking me to my vasectomy. I was like, I wasn't joking about that kid thing. Like you better not want any of these. So just get them out of the way early.
That's such a fun date idea, everyone. Yeah, it's awesome. Cool.
Do you follow Brian Johnson at all?
No, who's that?
The longevity guy. So no. He's gone like super viral on the internet because he started Braintree, which sold to PayPal for like $800 million. And he's just been spending $2 million a year, which is like notable because it's more than LeBron spends on his body to just kind of extend his life. And he does a ton of insane stuff. And he had like literally this tweet about setting expectations with his girlfriend. And it was like, dinner's at 11 a.m. I scheduled sex time. And he went through this like list of like 25 different things that like he needed. And he's like, so weird that I'm still single.
Yeah. Right. But again, it's, that's the other thing too in sales is sales is just meeting your terms, my price, your terms. And we land somewhere in between. So for example, like that thing with the girlfriend, like, hey, I don't want any more kids. If there's a thing there, like again, my price, your terms, or my terms, your price, like you're going to have to meet somewhere, but some things are not negotiable. And I think, gym owners like, well, I guess I can do it for $130 a month. No, you can't. No, pretend like you can't. Pretend like you're not the owner. Pretend like you're the boss and you're not allowed to do it.
Right.
So let's go back and talk about OpCap. Expectations are important. What I share on first dates: 11 a.m. dinner, 8:30 p.m. bedtime, no pillow talk, you sleep alone, no small talk, really don't care, no sunny vacations, scheduled sex, veggie daddy, must give plasma, you're not my number one priority. Unsure why I'm single.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. He's gonna have a hard time. He's gonna have to meet someone's terms or prices on something else. Then he's gonna need to find someone who's got just as obnoxious of a list, but they just miss each other, so they just fit perfectly, like jigsaw.
Right.
When you got $800 million, I think you can figure that out. Yeah. I think you got some things in it. You got some things in your court.
Yeah.
Let's go back and talk about op cap, as you call it. So I've watched some stuff on your channel. The one thing that you saw that you displayed that was pretty cool was just talking through storage solutions like Metabolic. I think you said was kind of the gold standard. Who are some other people, some other examples within the industry who are doing like getting a lot of equipment into a small space and running an efficient footprint in a way that wouldn't disgust the average CrossFit gym owner, right? Because
sure. Yeah, no, great. I think even a storage, it's more like just layout. I mean, look at when Orange Theory showed up, they do, the perimeter model. Treads are up against the wall. Behind it is the thing of rowers and behind it is the dumbbell. And they use the walls. CrossFit loses out because you guys have to kick up to your walls and then throw balls at them. And you need your walls for the fitness things and wall walks. And which is fine. Again, if these 3 exercises are worth the excess 3,000 square feet you need now. They aren't, spoiler alert. They're probably not. You can find another way to do these things, in my opinion.
Plus the constant holes in their drywall from kicking up with their
and you wonder why your landlord hates you. Yeah, and all the gyms are like, man, I don't know why the landlords. I can't tell you the number of landlords and listing agents who hear the use for clients that I work with that are CrossFit and like, yeah, we don't want them. And the gym owner's like, I don't understand. Like, it's pretty easy. But no, so I think you could look at a layout like that. There's a couple different, so there's in place, right? Like I talked about that. Then there's like, your stations. Stations would be Metabolic, Orange Theory, Barry's, and then you have like real creative thing. And I really give BeaverFit the nod to this. BeaverFit has been such a great come up in the industry besides their module, type setups that they did with the military and now with universities and things like that during COVID and all. I mean, they were the first ones, if you guys have familiar with Rumble's bench that fits all the dumbbells and all that was BeaverFit, right? Like putting like all that equipment in one. And again, what is that? That becomes an in-place model. Look at what Stephen Hitt's doing with Industrious. That's a full-on, they're not an affiliate anymore, but that's a full-on CrossFit model in 169 square feet, what he calls a halo. Every halo comes with a squat rack, a runner, a bike, a rower, a rope, a dumbbell, kettlebells, muscle up rate, everything you need right there, plyo box in that spot. And I think COVID, you saw every gym owner get gaffer's tape out and make squares. I mean, we had that set up in 2018 and everyone made fun of me. I mean, everyone in the CrossFit affiliate groups, I'm sure you guys have been privy to a lot of the fun that we have there in the CrossFit affiliate groups, and people not the biggest fan of me sometimes, but I did that. And they're like, that's the dumbest thing ever. You're going to have people sit in one spot and they can't leave. It's like, well, no, it's not that they can't leave. It's better client experience, in my opinion, and a better class flow. And now, like Steven, like I work with him and and all his franchisees to find their real estate. We do a test fit where I grab a 2D rendering of the company, like an Industrious or a Metabolic or someone who has a set layout, like where their spots are, where their equipment goes, and I can drop it on any other 2D rendering of a listed property or a site and be like, is that going to work in there? If it isn't, how much would we lose in revenue because we only fit X amount of people in class versus this? I mean, hell, we all know that the idea of class caps is still not, I mean, it's more popular now than it was, but how many CrossFit gyms would be like, yeah, well, we don't really have a class cap. It kind of depends on the workout. I'm like, that sounds like a really fun and consistent way to run the business. There's, we're building gym management software. We're putting a lot of thought into how to make reservations and booking better for the users. And yeah, there's still so many people like, oh yeah, well, I don't even have them check in, so it's fine. I was like, that's insane. I've caught a little like bird's eye view of what you're doing with Kilo, and I think one of the things that the software, like the member management software thing needs is there needs to be microeconomics attached. Like I was a MindBody customer for however long, and then I went to Mariana Tech because I needed their pick a spot feature was better than MindBody's with FitGrid. But I mean, the nice thing about MindBody is it breaks down utilization rates and all that to just an absolute beautiful degree, but it would never give me any metrics on the class, like ARC, average revenue per class, ARPC, average revenue per person per class, like stuff like that, those microeconomics, that's what it is. Because guess what? For every gym owner listening here, you are not selling fitness. You are selling seats. You are more of like American Airlines and the Madison Square Garden. You have X amount of spots in a day to sell. Now, you guys have payment processing with Kilo. Is there a limitation to how many credit cards or ACH accounts can be used in a transaction per month? Do you limit the gym owner on how many credit cards or checking accounts they could charge?
No.
The limits.
That would be really bad.
No.
That would be that.
I was like, is this a trick question? No, we don't do that.
Correct. So what's the bottleneck for a gym owner? How many people they can service per class hour. And we all know there are peak times, and they've been the same peak times. I don't care, COVID, non-COVID, they're the same peak times that have always existed, and minus maybe of a noon and like maybe a 9:30 moms or something like that. But that's it, guys. You really look at a building that you rent every day of every week of every month, you have like 6 to 12 hours or spots per day maybe to make money. And there's X amount of people that can come in there and pay you money for that spot, that seat. And it's all about selling out as close as you can. It's utilization rates and microeconomics of these individual classes, in my opinion, which then takes you to commercial real estate and square footage efficiency.
Well, that's the biggest thing. When I hear people don't track their class slots, it's just like, okay, so you have shitty data. You don't know your numbers. Like that's what you're telling me in one fell swoop. Like you have no idea what's going on in your gym, which, if you're at $5,000 to $10,000 a month in revenue, like you can kind of assume that, but like why not start? Why not start today? Why not start actually getting some information that you can use to run a successful gym? You finished your affiliate 2017, we said, and you started building your own concept, and you bought the building for that. And from what I understand, you had a partner, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this with Angelo on the Live Oak episode, but we didn't go into like actual real life examples. So talk to me about how you bought your building.
100%. So I had he was a personal training client that had become a good buddy of mine. He had several residential properties. I was in the process of nerding out, watching public access TV, watching rezoning hearings every Tuesday night. I'd said I didn't coach anymore at that point. I had a couple choice, 1%er PT clients I'd keep, but beyond that, so Tuesday nights I'd sit there, have a beer, and I'd watch rezoning hearings, and I would wait and see company, whatever shell company LLC is rezoning this giant piece of property in the shithole area in Charlotte. Do your Googling, like, oh, they do multifamily, they do apartments, oh, they do plazas, they do whatever. And so I was able to start telling like what areas in Charlotte suck now and that could be popular. So like where my building is, the only reason you ever went there is if you ran out of crack. If you were short on crack and you needed more crack, you went there to this part of town. But I saw what was going to happen there. And I went to Ed, is his name. And I said to Ed, hey, I'm hell-bent on buying commercial real estate. I'm going to use the SBA 504. You said you wanted to get in the commercial. He goes, yeah. Well, think about it. For a commercial real estate investor, what are their biggest obstacles? Number one, they cannot get an SBA loan because they don't own the small business end. They have to go traditional. So 35% down payment. Number two, they then need to go ahead and list the property or already have a tenant lined up to go in there. But when that tenant goes in there, now they have to take 6% of the entire lease value, 3 to the listing agent, 3 to the broker's agent, and that's commission. I wrote a $190,000 check when I leased out my building to the brewery on those 2 10-year terms. So commissions are not cheap. And we all know what happens if the tenant goes belly up midterm. You don't get those commissions back. There's no clawback play there. And I gave me and Ed put up $340,000 in TI, tenant improvement. That's funds you give to a tenant so they can further make the building fit their use and be a salvageable use. And hopefully they're doing capital improvements, which would be things like air conditioning, plumbing, electricity, not like big ass fans and drywall. Those aren't capital improvements. So to Ed, I brought a lot of value to this. Now I had cash saved up, so I wasn't coming to him with my hand out, but I was able to get him a golden ticket. He was able to partner with me, purchase commercial real estate with 10% down, because that's what the SBA 504 requires down. So I'm instantly worth 20% of equity, even if I didn't give him another dollar. If I didn't have any money, and this is one of the ways I structure deals with gym owners who don't have cash, but they're working with a cash investor and they use an SBA product, you're worth 20% instantly because you can get the golden ticket that they can't. So we did that. We went 50-50 in.
Sorry, let's pause there just to so the gym owner understands it. So like if you go to the bank to buy a building, they're going to want 30 to 35% down.
On a traditional bank loan.
Let's just say 30. Exactly. And then if you go through the SBA, you only need to put down 10. So what Stu's saying, you go to an investor and say, hey, I got this deal. I have a cash flowing asset. The SBA is going to lend to me. We only have to put down 10% to buy the building. So that means the investor doesn't need to come up with the other 20% he would need to buy a commercial building.
Nor does he have to pay commissions because the tenant is you. And assuming most gym owners are going to have a relationship with this investor, probably a member, very similar to my story, like many of our stories where we got a little bit of help or we got, networked with people, came from the gym. He trusts in that. Like he's like, oh, you're a good paying tenant. Most commercial real estate investors aren't trying to cash in and then cash out in 7 years. That's not how most commercial real estate investors think. They're thinking long-term, buy and hold, not buy and sell. Right. So this takes care of everything. It's like, oh, fuck, I only have to come out 10%. I have a tenant here I know is going to be able to pay the rent. They've got a history of it. And I don't have to hunt. I don't have to bird dog and hunt down a tenant. Like it could take you over a year to find a tenant for a property. And guess what? He'd be paying a mortgage on something that isn't cash flowing. So yes, you're a very attractive. There's great opportunities to create partnerships. I came with the same amount of cash he did. But even if I didn't, and that's most of the clients I work with, you still guys have great opportunity to be of an immense value to a potential investor.
Sweet. And then for your space, yours was pretty large, right?
Way larger than what we needed, 10,500.
And then you subleased, right? Pretty quickly, or your gym operated the entire space? So
the one thing I was lucky enough to have the foresight on and the maturity on, and this is, it's tough for gym owners, is I knew I needed to lease a building that had a higher potential than being a gym. My urban movement model that I was converting to is a 3,500 square foot model. But I did a 10,500 square foot building. That doesn't make any sense because I knew a 3,500 square foot building was not going to allow me to retire, in 10 years, 20 years, whatever that may be. So I wanted and went bigger. The craft brewery scene in Charlotte is the second highest per capita behind Asheville, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say Asheville.
Yeah. And so my favorite brewery in Charlotte was the Unknown Brewery. My favorite spot, Ed and I would go there. And we modeled our interior upfit after a brewery. We made it so that a brewery could walk in and look at my space and be like, oh, shit, 90%'s done. They left the back wide open, the front areas, like the bathroom, all of it. And that's weird when people are like, you got so lucky. No one's, you got a brewery. I'm like, no, I didn't get lucky, dude. This was very intentional. This is very purposeful. I literally had the architect design this after another brewery and I just made it work for my gym. It was a crappy layout. Like it was weird. I hosted level 1s and level 2s. I was still technically an affiliate for a long time till they essentially they fired me and got rid of me. And we had a little issue during one of the level 2s or whatever we hosted. They would go in the back and there's 7,000 square feet in the back. There's just wide open warehouse. And my gym, like the class that we created Urban, only used 3,500 of it, this one half. And in the beginning, members like, well, why aren't we using that space over there? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. So you built to technical default? Like, I guess, So if people don't know, SBA you can have a tenant, but the business technically needs to operate 51% of the space in order to qualify. So you basically were like, fuck this from the get. I knew at some point if the right suitor came by, we had numbers. Like when we created our partnership agreement, we had a sales number that if we were offered that number, it would trigger a conversation of sell. And we had a lease number. If that was offered, it would trigger that conversation. And I'd have to part ways with my gym ownership thing, that was a very hard day. Like, it was not like, oh, great, I'm super pumped. Like that was like 2 weeks of, that sucked. I was not ready to get rid of the gym. We had successfully gone through COVID and I was super proud of the team and we came out unscathed and we were doing well. And I was really pissed about this whole thing, but it's like, I'm also a real estate. And that's kind of where I was talking about, guys, if you purchase commercial real estate, don't do so and still be a gym owner first. You're not, you're a real estate investor first. You made one of the biggest financial decision probably of your life, because this is much more expensive than your home. Okay. You need to be thinking, what will this serve in its next iteration? And that just came true for me at a much earlier date. So to what John's saying, obviously the SBA isn't giving money to investors. They're giving them to owner occupants. The owner of the building occupies the building, with their, and it's 51%, like John said, for current existing. It's up to, I think it's 60 or 61% if it's a brand new build. But okay, so I had a tenant come in, or another leasee, they come in the brewery, they want to lease 100% of it. So my gym's not going to be in there anymore. So yeah, so you just go under technical default with the SBA, but all that essentially means is the bank, you refi cash out and the bank buys out the SBA's portion. It's pretty simple.
And from what I understand, I think you made a video about this, so you're public with the numbers. So after the lease, you were making like 20 grand a month in mailbox money.
Yeah, 20 grand a month. And my business partner Ed and I, we never talked, like we were really good. We didn't need the cash, so we just let that sit and accumulate because we weren't done. We were going to take down another property. Ed passed away last year. He had multiple myeloma. He had cancer. So now I bought out his equity to his estate and closed that deal a little bit earlier this year. So now I own 100% of it.
Sorry to hear that. That's shitty.
Cancer sucks.
Yeah. So your plan now is just to buy more buildings in your area, or are you using that money to help gym owners buy buildings? What's the? No,
I'm not going to start a REIT or anything like that. I don't think for like a fund for gym owners to do it. I thought about it. I ran that idea past some people.
And everyone's like, no, don't do that. That's
stupid. Actually, look at Withco. So Withco does this. Withco, WTIHCO, will go and if you qualify, which is just very hard to qualify for it, they'll buy your building and they'll set you up on a 5-year lease. And it's a lease to own program, and you pay a significant percentage over the lease rate, and then money goes into escrow, and then you could buy it back from them in 5 years. Real cool concept. So there were models like that I investigated and I looked at, but I don't think that's where I could help. I think right now, like 98% of my clients are leasing properties. They're not buying properties yet. There's still like the work of everyone, the two brains and the affiliate U's and the Mad Labs and the WTFs. We still have a lot more work to do to get these guys in positions to purchase. And once that happens, maybe one of those ideas come through. But no, so that money sits there. It's invested, but it sits and accumulates. And I've been hoping for a recession. I've been praying for there to be blood in the streets so I could buy a property at 40% off. But I don't think that's going to happen. And so yeah, it's just too expensive. Like right now, if who does commercial real estate, you're probably sitting tight. It just doesn't really make too much sense to borrow the money right now when you could chill for just a little bit, and things they'll come back down in a while.
So yeah, you said you're dealing mostly with leasing. So when Teo talked about us expanding and then contracting, that was the most expensive mistake we made in business. That was a partnership related mistake. We got into bed with a guy who turned out to be a fraud. And then all the second best partnership, or all the second most expensive mistakes we made were leasing. And I think that's something that has been sorely missing from the how to run a gym world, right? So some examples off the top. We operated in Hoboken. The building next to us was bought. They tore it down, built condos. The new condos sold for $2 million on the bottom, $2 million on the top. They move in, this gym's too loud. We were there, we were there before, and so they built it like on our wall. Guy on the top with the $2.5 million penthouse sues the shit out of us. Drag it out for a while. In the meantime, we lease another space, the only space that is available at the time, because it was just like a cutthroat real estate market, not zoned correctly. So we're looking at like 12 to 18 months of zoning. So we said, fuck it. Let's just build it out and try to move in and hope nobody notices. Somebody noticed. We got kicked out of there immediately. At that time, we went back in. And then we had like a judgment against us from that initial lawsuit from the noise. And then we found another space on the other side of town, but that building was going to get rezoned and rebuilt. And we're like, we're going to give you a month-to-month lease on the building. And so, yeah. And then in New York, obviously, like you had the bricks and all those, I'm sure you're familiar with all the
JP's model,
lawsuits and all. Well, just their sound. They went through $250,000 worth of bullshit.
It's again, this kind of went to one of the reasons I got de-affiliated from CrossFit and came up with my own model. The amount of money gym owners have lost because for whatever reason, you think dropping a barbell,
they need to drop weights.
I can create a far better fitness argument as to why dropping a barbell will make you worse in fitness than you can make why dropping a barbell makes you better in fitness. And it cost us so much money in these lease scenarios. That's the noise. It's not because you were playing Nickelback at 99 decibels. It was the barbells.
It was weird though. Like with the one gym in New York where we were in the basement and it was fine. We did get a fair amount of leads because it was like, oh, you guys can drop weights. Oh, I'm canceling. I'm going. And our one in Philadelphia, same thing. The one across the street, they couldn't drop and we could because we were in the basement. It's such a weird world. It's so strange.
But our New York one where everybody gets sued, we somehow got lucky there. It was just a concrete bunker under a hot pot restaurant where they made so much fucking noise.
That one we really were hidden. So part of the reason why no one could find us, but we were hidden enough where we could just operate in secret.
I thought Pound Pad would do much better than it did. I think it's just gym owners are too cheap to buy Pound Pads, but those work extremely well. Like vibration mitigation and noise. That's a great product.
So when we were operating, it was before the Pound Pad. And so I think CrossFit NYC had discovered that if you used the Rogue boxes to drop, or the Rogue foam boxes.
Yeah.
But the problem was if you operated with high capacity, like everyone in New York did, they would just dent in the middle. And so like after, 3 months of use, it was just smashing back down on there. Especially if you got people, it's New Jersey. We had some animals, 335 overhead, just dropping down on there.
Want to keep your
if you're getting
operating
sued
costs
for
high?
noise, by the way, like hide your Instagram. That was how that we got rocked in court because they literally brought a projector and they went through every one of the coaches' Instagrams. And like they had like our coach there. He's a guy who actually bought the gym for me. He's got a mouth on him, and he does his like. He does his like deposition, talks about how took all these precautions, and they literally rolled out the projector and just smashing 335 overhead. Fuck yeah. And just like shirts off, chest bumping. And for like 15 minutes, they played videos of that. And I knew we were absolutely cooked. So how do you not be like us? How do you not make, hundreds of thousands of dollars in lease mistakes?
Minus the cease and desist of dropping barbells overhead, and actually be a strong little boy and girl and put it back where you got it. Besides that, So here's
they won't do it.
So that's the thing is it's getting to the point where I think it's going to. I think you're eventually going to get people to that spot just based on. I think it's going to be based on the square footage and based on where people want to be. Like the amount of multifamily that's exploding in the United States, insane. The amount of great retail on the first floor of multifamily, lots of it. You will not be able to do that under the first floor of multifamily. And if a commercial, here's the other thing too, that some of those gyms you mentioned, their cost outlay for that warehouse or that space, maybe back then wasn't too expensive to the point where you protected the investment. No one thinks of their lease as an investment. I do. I 100% do. And I'm like, well, unless I own it and I'm paying someone else's mortgage, it's not an investment. Shut the fuck up. It sure is. You're paying $30 a square foot. I need you making 90. It is an investment for you to have this space. Okay. So if that's the case, and now cost of real estate is very high, it has not slowed down. It will only forever and ever go up and to the right. Periods of downticks followed by up and to the right. You'll think more about the space, and taking better care of it. Why do residential, I got a lot of buddies who do rental homes and Airbnbs and short-term rentals. I would never in my life get into residential investment real estate. Who, your 1-year tenant doesn't give a shit, is going to mess up that place. But the brewery that's in my spot, they put $1.5 million in my building. And they take care of it because they want it to look nice versus the old school minded CrossFit gym. That's the whole, like Mateo was saying, the holes in the drywall from kicking up. They're like, that's just what happens. I think more people now, because the cost of entering the commercial real estate market is so high and they have to spend money on build outs because landlords are not giving money to these kind of use fitness concepts. I can get a Metabolic or another franchise TI. I can't get a mom and pop CrossFit TI. It's probably not happening. But so, I think it's just the cost is going to make people take better care of their shit.
And that's what Live Oak told us. It's just way easier to underwrite a franchise deal because one, it's easier to model out versus a training gym with no background or comps to it. Where if you're a Orange Theory, you can say we have 800 locations around here and each one does this and the profit's Y and we're going to be able to pay you. But one thing you said that I thought was interesting was this idea before. It's like, if you're going to buy a building, it's the most expensive thing you're going to do as a business owner, or probably personally as well. Yeah. So it's the most expensive thing they're going to do. But it's the same thing with like a lease when you're starting a business. It's one of the most, if not the most expensive business decision. It blows my mind how many gym owners will just like not negotiate, sign a lease without a lawyer, and then fucking agonize whether they spend an extra $100 or not to get an Echo bike versus, the low tier assault bike.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of broker, I mean, you guys have probably talked to gym owners who didn't even use a broker. Like they just like whatever the listing agent of the landlord, or maybe the landlord didn't even use a listing agent. They just did it themselves, and they just, kind of piece of paper. I looked at a lease the other day. I was like, did you get this in 1992? Like this was the most archaic thing I had ever seen. He goes, no, this is 6 years old. I'm like, bro, who was your broker? He's like, I didn't have one. The landlord's son and me typed this up on Word. I was like, oh, I can tell. Like,
definitely no holes in that document.
No, not at all whatsoever. So it's, I hear that. And I think now, again, because the price to enter the market is higher, I think people are getting smarter. They're hiring the Matt Beckers of the world at gym lawyers, right? They are reaching out to brokers or site suitability consultants. Like they're taking it more seriously, especially because you don't have to pay a broker or me. Like again, like my services are paid for by the landlord. So I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't cost you anything to hire someone who has a much better understanding of this game than you do.
And for someone who doesn't see the value or doesn't get it yet, like we talked about some tips. Use a broker, have a lawyer read your lease. What are some other just like 101 type things that we should be looking at when we're assessing whether?
Yeah. So some basic stuff. I also, just getting into deep water. So there's a handful of gyms I've worked with in the past couple of years that they could afford the lease. They did not properly budget to the upfit. Because remember, the landlord's not doing the TI for them, right? So they have to do the upfit. And a lot of people are kind of hearing the cautionary tales of like, I'm going to get my buddy in the middle of the night. We're going to build this wall or whatever. It's not going to be up to code and whatever, till the fire marshal shows up in, maybe a year or 2 years from now or whatever, and bust you. My good buddy, Brian Strump, he got into a little bit issue with his building, CrossFit Steel Creek, great facility, awesome business. And I guess maybe the last guy just didn't do the wall up to code. And then Brian's the one having to deal with it, many years later. So it's the construction upfit. Like the average retail spot right now that I'm looking at could be anywhere from $150 to $250 per square foot in construction.
To build boutique style, I'm assuming.
That means so that would be shell. So any space where they're listed as a vanilla box or a shell, which means
locker room fit out,
essentially
plumbing, electrical, signage.
Some of them might not even have cement there yet. It's all the gravel because they don't want to lay the foundation, the cement, until you say where the plumbing's going to go, because then they got to rip it all back up. Now that's a first generation use. Like no one's ever been in a kind of space. That's what that means. But on like use spaces, the biggest advice I have for gym owners right now, when we go looking, don't look at the market. You go on LoopNet and Crexy. Right. And then brokers and myself, we have access to more listings on those platforms than what they show you guys. But still, that's what's on market. You got to go off market. Every space I listed, and I lease personally as a gym, was off market. The building I bought was off market. What does that mean? That means I have more options because I didn't have to compete with anybody. So here's a great example. A gym owner is in a market and maybe they're talking to you guys like, I can't find anything in Seattle. And it's because they're on LoopNet and Crexy and they're not seeing anything. Cool. Drive around town and find businesses that have buildings that are leasing buildings that you were like, man, I'd love to be in that spot there. Cool. Walk in, look them up. Were they around before COVID? There is a moderately high chance that business owner is only still in business because they have a personal guarantee in that lease. They've probably been late on a few months rent. They're still digging themselves out of their COVID hole. And you go in there and, hey, and this is how I got my first 2 locations. Are you the owner? No. Are you the owner of the building? No. Are you the owner of the business? No, let me get them for you. Hey, my name's Stu and this is weird. I don't mean to be rude. I'm looking to open up my gym. And I'm in love with your building here. Like, this is such a great spot. And this sounds awkward and I apologize. Are you guys ending your lease anytime soon or looking to get out of your lease? And I had that happen in my first 2 locations. They're like, Yeah, actually, we've been trying to relocate, but we got 4 more years left on this. Come back to my office, let's talk. And it worked. Like, that's what I recommend gym owners do when they're looking off market, but it requires you to do some work. You got to get out there and you got to knock on doors.
And the same thing when buying as well. So that was our first 2 we started from scratch, and then we had 3 that we bought. It's the exact same thing. I see people like being like, I can't find a business for sale, because we talk a lot about how we think that's like a preferable model. If we were starting from scratch today, we'd probably buy. It's just like every gym's for sale. So many, like even franchises. Like we had a meeting with a major fitness franchise back in, I don't know, what was it, Taylor? 2018? Yeah, it was 2018.
Yeah.
It was election year. Yeah.
Yes.
Where they were just like, yeah, what market? Well, I got like a gym and break even in these 3 markets. We'll just give you the keys. You just show up, take the responsibility. You can have.
Was it at 45?
No, it was not, but they went a similar route. But we obviously didn't take the deal. But there, a lot of gym owners will sell you their building and their business for basically not the building, the business for the price of the Rogue equipment, and that's for something that's breaking even. So,
great opportunities. And the building I bought was listed for lease.
You just, hey, mister, do you buy it?
Me and Ed had ran at another property for almost a year, offer, LOI. They just fell through in the 12th hour. The deal didn't work. And I was so jaded. I was like, I needed to find a new location. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this building or buying a thing. So I just went to go look at a property for lease and loved it. And then just struck up the conversation and got back into the game and did that. But yeah, that's an option for anyone listening to this. But it's also, here's the deal, guys. Like, again, I don't think you need to have a ton of cash. Like, I think you could partner with somebody who's interested in getting an investment, but also you need to have some cash. Like, you have to, again, the bank, and you guys talked to Angelo, the bank is going to look at you with a magnifying glass, especially on the SBA side. They're guaranteeing this note. You can't have run an unbankable, unprofessional kind of entity, and then all of a sudden, like, oh man, I want to buy something. Like, it's a realization I feel like a lot of them have. Like, it's almost like all of a sudden someone shook me, and I'm like, oh my God, I've done nothing the past 9 years. I've got nothing to show for it. I don't have any assets. I want to buy something. They're getting jaded at this point. Jaded gym owners, it's like everything's peachy keen, and all of a sudden, I mean, it when it drops quick. Like, their love affair with the business, I've found. And by that point, it's like, man, they're doing a 3-year look back. 3 years. And so right now, everyone's getting a look back to 2020, and I'm getting most of the banks to, kind of wash 2020, maybe go look at 2019. But yeah, you got to have 3, you don't always have to have exactly 3, but like 3-year look back is pretty standard.
And if that 3rd year is ugly, you better show growth.
Yeah, correct.
What Angelo said that was interesting that I didn't know was that if you are purchasing a business with real estate tied to it, so if you find a gym, like let's say yours,
roll it all together, 25-year.
Exactly. So rather than if you buy a business through the SBA, it'll be probably around a 7-year term. Mm-hmm. But if you're buying a business with real estate, assuming you can pay for the real estate itself, like that's going to be a 25-year term. So your payment's going to be way lower.
Yeah. It's just rare to find that.
So hard in the gym space, especially if you're coaching gym. Average
commercial real estate owner only owns 2 buildings. The average one. Like, the average ones are guys like me, like 1, right? Maybe 2. It's, I mean, like, again, it's a conglomerate. I mean, like, the people that own the most are the Argos of the world, the Cushmans of the world, like the big firms and these big organizations. That's why I tell gym owners, like, you get to the point where if you can purchase commercial real estate, you're 0.0001% of the gym owner population and the small business owner population. The most,
you're also fighting for scraps. Like, that's the downside of that, is like the people you're playing against are so sophisticated,
They are. And that's why, having great relationships with your landlord, not kicking holes in their fucking wall, maybe it helps out when it comes time to be like, hey, Mr. Landlord, we've been together for 7 years. You're 80. Would there be any opportunity for me to purchase this from you? And you get we do a lot of creative financing, like sub 2 and owner financing, where either the owner takes position 1 or position 2 behind a bank. And
explain what that is for, I guess.
So creative financing is like when maybe the gym owner is having a hard time finding that ad or that business part of that cash partner. So a sub 2 is essentially where you would go to, let's say Mateo owned a building and he still has a note on it. He still has a mortgage and I've been his tenant. I'm like, hey, Mateo, man, listen, I've been wanting to get into commercial real estate. And let's say, unfortunately, Mateo he's got something going on and he's got a family member that's sick, or he needs a liquidation event. He needs cash on hand now for whatever. Okay. He's got a big gambling problem. I don't know, something, right? He needs cash on hand. We can do a subject to purchase where essentially I give him a chunk of cash. He gives me the deed to the property. We sign an agreement that I'm going to pay his note. Now, as far as the bank's concerned, nothing changes because he is still on the note, not me, but I have the deed. That's the ownership of it, but he holds the debt. So I give him a chunk of cash, right? A nice, down payment type scenario. And then I just take over his payments. Now we have an airtight agreement. The day I miss a payment, he gets to take the deed back. And then all that cash I paid into the property, that's all good equity for him. Right. So you can create some pretty nice, airtight ones that work well for both parties, but that'd be subject to. And then there's owner financing where maybe the owner takes the first position where the owner goes, hey, I own this building outright. Stu, you want to buy it for $1 million? Okay. Here's the deal, man. You go ahead and give me 5% down, 4% down, whatever that is. And then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take your rent and apply a portion of that or whatever percentage to the payments of this thing. And we're going to run this out over a period of time. Or they take a second position, meaning you go to a bank, maybe you get that SBA, an express loan or a 7A, you get some kind of loan from the SBA, and then you throw that chunk at the landlord, and you've now the bank's got a position on it. Then the owner's got a position in owner financing. So that's like the second position option. Those are kind of the big three from a creative financing perspective. There's also crowdfunding. Like I've got a gym right now out in the West Coast is going to get a big group together and co-op it.
Oh, Teo.
I'm very interested in that one. Yeah. I want to do a whole episode on that one.
Yeah. So that's an option. But yeah, I mean, there's like the Withco, like that's an interesting idea. I don't know again what their selection criteria are for properties, but that's also the hard thing too, is a gym owner being like, I want to buy my building. The odds of your building being available, that's again, unless you have a great relationship with that landlord. And that's why I tell people, like, don't let your landlord be someone you just forward a check to. Like, create a relationship with that individual. And sometimes landlords are mean and they're not nice people and they're not like, I get it. And nobody likes a triple net lease, except for landlords. We love it. But create a good relationship with that landlord in case that opportunity ever arises.
Many a yacht is named triple net. I think that's what I learned from John.
Yeah. A lot of triple net yachts. So you rattled off like 5 or 6 different ways you can buy a building. It's sounding so easy. Yet I've heard you say before that when most gym owners approach you about buying a building, you tell them they're not ready. And so how do you know when you're ready? And how do you prepare? If this is something you want to do one day, how do you do it? How do you start taking the steps now?
Yeah. So a couple things, like you want to look at what debt does the business, like, is it a profitable entity? Right. We got to be, anyone who hasn't listened, please go back and listen to the awesome conversation these guys had with Angelo at Live Oak Bank. Live Oak is out of Wilmington, North Carolina. They're the largest SBA lender in the United States. They have a great reputation. We recommend a lot of business over there. And I would say you got to let's go with profitability, because most banks are going on to see like a 1.2 or 1.25 debt service coverage ratio. And if your profit is 0, and then we add on debt, we're not going to hit that number. So we got to have some level of profit. This is the other thing too. How many gym owners that are like, oh, I never pay taxes? I'm like, you do realize paying taxes is a direct consequence of making a lot of money, right? Like you writing off your truck and all your clothes and running it through so your business shows $0 in profit because you and your accountant have a tax strategy of paying as little tax as possible is great when you're on the come up, or if you have no desire to go after conventional lending. The second you want to look for lending or an investor, or you want to franchise your thing, you want to go get FDD docs and you're going to show 0 profit the past 6 years, get the hell out of here. But so talk with your accountant and say, hey man, I'd like to make moves like A, B, or C, franchise, license, buy a building, buy a home, whatever it is. you can't be writing off everything through the business anymore. Like that's an okay play for certain scenarios, not if you want to go this route. So you got to show a profit, right? You got to go ahead and look at your current debt. And what kind of debt do you have? EIDL, EIDL doesn't count. PPP doesn't count. We're not talking about that stuff, but like stuff that makes you look bad, credit card debt, not good.
That ice bath you finance on Klarma for 19.99%, whatever. Yeah.
Gym owners buying plunges for it's so funny because I'm getting one for my place, but I would never do it for a gym unless I literally was going to have like a sweat house or a Perspire franchise or something in next door.
We can go deep. Did you talk to Mark, our mutual friend Mark, about Sweat House? That tickles him.
Yes. No, we did. Jamie Weeks. We can get into the Jamie Weeks conversation and that whole company and everything there. But very familiar with Sweat House.
So you're a really busy guy. You've got your hands in a lot of pots. You're a real estate mogul. You are
tempo training mogul.
Yes, you are a innovator in the space of fitness. You a mentor and guru to many as well.
A media mogul.
I wanted to talk about that media piece, actually. How much of your time is spent creating content? How do you think about content now? And how should gym owners think about content?
Yeah. I love storytelling. It's one of my favorite things. It's why I think I resonate with like marketing and branding and those different topics. I made my first videos in like late 2014, 2015 with my, iPhone at CrossFit South End. And, I've always enjoyed that. And, I don't do as much like editing and all that. And I still shoot some, and we got a good team. Like we leverage the video huskies of the world. We have a full team, and I've got a full-time creative director, and they pump out all the fun stuff that people see. I look at shooting content for gym owners as like they probably don't have time to make content. So again, and this is like a la Gary V in like 2012, but like just document, like you're already doing shit that would make good content. You just need someone to hold the brick and film it. And then, making content so easy. Like Descript is going to make it so that you never have to hire a video editor again. Your 12-year-old cousin can literally edit your videos. Opus Clips, like take a long format link, drop it in Opus Clips. It will produce 30 plus pieces of micro content with the captions, with the transcription, with the emojis, the whole thing, like the AI stuff, it's all there. So for gym owners making content, I don't really think too much. They need to think too much about like creating it. Like we all did, like you have to create it back in the day. But I'll tell you, one of our best marketing plays at Urban Movement was the podcast. We had a podcast at the gym. We interviewed local businesses, and that's how we created like such a great network of B2B offsite events and relationships, and just a constant inflow of leads that we never had to pay $1 for.
I love this media, man. I love it. I wish we did it 10 years ago.
Oh, podcasting.
It's where else can it's a webinar, you push people down the funnel. Like you don't know who I am. You listen to me talk for an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden I know, like, and trust you. Like you can't do that doing a TikTok dance or
Beauty of the podcast for the gyms is that you have 3 kinds of people you interview or talk to. You and your coaches just ripping on each other, talking shit, having fun. Don't talk about too much about fitness and shit. Nobody cares. Like that's not what's fun. They want to know how you riff off each other. Like the coaches are characters in the business. Your members love these coaches. They love their isms, right? Like when I coached, there were Stu-isms, things I said and I did, and mannerisms, and they would love to hear me and Isaac riff off each other and talk a little shit. And like that's what they listen to for 15 to 30 minutes on these short little episodes. Then you have members. Interview your members, because I promise you, your members have never been interviewed on a podcast. So when you're interviewing them, you talk to them, hey, your boyfriend, oh, why he never comes in here? Hey, your roommate, hey, your mom, hey, whatever. And then they go back and they tell boyfriend, roommate, and mom, oh, I was on a podcast and I talked about you. Guess what? Roommate, boyfriend, and mom do. They're going to go listen to that shit. Like, man, those CrossFit kids, I thought they were kind of douchey, but they're actually kind of cool. I listened to that podcast. They seemed really friendly. Kind of like a lot of gyms listening to this right now that got a lot of members from a social event, like something that was outside the gym and not intimidating and fun and laid back, because they got to know your personality, because they thought you were this douchey barbell dropping gym. But then they got to meet you and had a couple beers with you at a tailgate, and they're like, oh, these are really cool people. These are actually kind of like my people. And so that's what podcasting does. And then you interview local businesses, and that allows you to grow a B2B network. Because if like I think the reason I had such success in Charlotte, I could go anywhere and someone knew me. I could go into a business and that they knew me. I knew the owner. And I was so big on local, like Sweat Local was our hashtag and the whole thing. And we would interview local businesses, non-fitness related, completely non-fitness related. And we got to know everyone. So we could host events and do fun little things that would lead to lead generation and brand awareness every weekend. And I stole that from Alchemy 365. Like I looked at how they did lead generation, all organic. And I just was like, that is the fucking way to go. Add digital with it. Go for add some digital, 100%. But man, if you could just be a hyper local celebrity in your town, right? Or the section of your town where it's not that hard at that point to get people in the door.
We were talking with Andrew Charlesworth about this and saying that like if you were running a premium gym in your town, which everybody listening to this probably should be, you have like one of the most powerful networks in your city because of the people that go through your doors. Like I know people who set up shop in, rich commuter towns outside of New York City, and the people that they know just through like the people that come through the door, the people they train, it's insane. You wouldn't be able to get the network unless you were like a politician or a CEO of like an 8-figure company. So to your point, I love the B2B idea. One thing a lot of gym owners say is like, well, no one's going to listen to it, or a lot of people aren't listening to it. It's like, you don't need to. Like one, the networking is amazing. And two, like Teo and I have a close personal friend. He runs a very tiny podcast. Like I think maybe 10 listens an episode tops. But he publishes pretty frequently and it's on a very niche topic. And I can tell you that he makes like over $10,000 a month just from that one podcast.
Micro-influencers.
Audience size. Yeah, exactly. Audience size does not equate to dollars.
I believe my theory is that if you're a micro influencer, whatever that means, let's say it's under 50,000, under 20,000, whatever the number is, it's a non-impressive amount of followers. You have the highest ability to monetize that audience. And in the gym setting, you want your members to listen to it. Because the one thing gym owners, they lose is influence. Every gym owner listening to this, like in the CrossFit variety, Ben Bergeron, Ryan Fisher, Marcus Philly could tell all your members to do something, and then you tell them to do the antagonist of it, and guess who they're not going to listen to? Your ass. And here's why. Those individuals have spent years creating a relationship remotely with your members. I mean, how many CrossFit gym owners listening to this are like, why is it my members are wanting open gym to do Ben Bergeron's program and he's never met them, but I try to sell them individual design or personalized programming and like, I can't do it because you haven't made as many fucking videos as Ben Bergeron has. He has positioned himself as an SME. You haven't. That's it.
You haven't listened to 10 hours. Like you haven't talked to them for 10 hours about programming. That's it. And Ben Bergeron has.
So it's just influence. So if they listen to you, again, your brand influence is the amount of times a customer thinks about you when they're not directly dealing with you. Okay. So for a gym, you already have a lot. Like how many of the clients are like grabbing the phone, like what's the workout today? They're looking at the app, right? And then maybe they're looking throughout the day, how many people are in class? Is that cute girl in class? Like blah, 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 blah. Like whatever. They're thinking about the gym, like add a podcast in there once a week. We're not talking about like a daily upload. And then do it about all the cool things that are happening. Like most cities have like some fun little digital publication that shows all the new bars and restaurants and cool things that are happening. That's all we did in my podcast. Like I took this podcast equipment, three of us, and we went because I never had fried chicken in my life. I live in the South now and I've never had fried chicken. And we went to Bojangles, we went to Chick-fil-A, and we went to Church's maybe. And we ate like back to back, and I just filmed the whole thing, and it was a podcast, and we went and taste tested, and we're like chewing in the mics and the whole deal. And we voted at the end which one was the best fried chicken in Charlotte. And like, that was fun. And it had the highest number of downloads we ever had. And people just thought it was hilarious. And my members shared it with their friends and they listen and blah, blah. We all understand how the content thing works.
Yeah. We had one called Tucked In with Teo. And Mateo would go live every Friday. And I think the most popular one was when we hit a sales milestone in Two Brain, and Chris sent everybody in the sales and marketing team like these lobsters for dinner.
Yeah.
And Teo being from New York has never like seen a live animal in the wild, And it was I don't know, what was it? Like, it was a 2-hour live video. But
it was 2 of them. I had to cook them. Yeah. I had to kill them. One. Yeah. It was very scary.
And you filmed the whole thing?
Whole thing
we were live. We were live.
Dude, that's awesome. That's so good.
People coming. And there were members who were chefs who were like, this is how you do it. This is how you're doing it wrong.
Like
and
a Michelin star chef, like tuning in.
Very famous chefs be like, this is wrong. Stop.
That's funny though. That's the stuff. Like, think of the videos most of us watch. They're kind of just silly. Like they're not overly, you can look at like what Hermosi does and stuff like that and just be like, it's not production value anymore. Right. It's substance of the video. Right. You don't have to do what Mr. Beast does. Like, these could be very simple productions, kids.
All right, Stu, this has been awesome. Where do people go if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, just go look up at Jim Real Estate or jimrealestate.co or at WTF Jim Talk or any of those things, and my ginger face will pop up and you can find and see things about me and all that. So I greatly appreciate you guys having me on and letting me talk shop with you and your audience today. This is great.
Hey, anything that helps gym owners get more wealthy. That's all for this week's Gym World. Be sure to dislike, unsubscribe, and leave a hateful comment. We'll see you next week.